My daughter asked to use my lake house while I was traveling for work. 3 days later, the property manager called me, her voice shaking. Ma'am, there's a child locked in the basement storage room. She says she's your granddaughter. I took the first flight home and uncovered a nightmare I never saw coming. Good evening, dear listeners. It's Margaret Chen again. Please like this video, stay till the end, and comment what city, state, or country you're watching from. The property manager's voice was shaking so badly, I could barely understand her. Mrs. Chen, there's a child locked in the basement. She says she's your granddaughter. I didn't have a granddaughter. My daughter Rebecca didn't have children. But when I opened that basement door and saw her, 6 years old, 37 pounds, living on a mattress on concrete with a bucket for a toilet, I understood. My daughter had hidden her own child like a dirty secret for 3 years. And I had no idea. Good evening, dear listeners. It's Margaret Chen again. Please like this video, stay till the end, and comment the city, state, or country you're watching from. At 67 years old, I thought I'd seen everything. 42 years as a pediatric nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital. 42 years of walking into rooms where children suffered. Broken bones that didn't come from accidents. Burns in strange patterns. Kids who flinched when adults moved too fast. I knew every sign of abuse. Every symptom of neglect. I'd reported dozens of cases to Child Protective Services over my career. Testified in court. Watched parents I'd reported being led away in handcuffs. I was good at my job because I understood something fundamental. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like tired parents. Sometimes they look like respected members of the community. Sometimes they look like your own daughter. Rebecca was my only child. 39 years old when this happened. Marketing director for a major pharmaceutical company, pulling in about $110,000 a year. Not bad for a girl who barely made it through state college. She wasn't always this cold. I remember when she was 7 years old, she'd help me bake cookies for my patients at the hospital. She'd carefully decorate each one with frosting, her little tongue sticking out in concentration. Mommy, do you think this will make the sick kids smile? That's what she used to ask me. That little girl with frosting on her nose and genuine concern in her eyes. I don't know where she went. I don't know when she disappeared. Everything changed 6 years ago when she met Kyle Morrison. He was 42, a corporate attorney at one of those big downtown Seattle firms. The kind of man who wore watches that cost more than most people's cars. The kind of man who photographed everything for what he called the aesthetic. At their engagement dinner, a place so expensive I had to look at the menu twice to believe the prices, Kyle spent 20 minutes photographing the wine bottle from different angles before anyone could drink. He adjusted the lighting. He checked the composition. He posted it to Instagram with some pretentious caption about living intentionally. Rebecca laughed like it was charming. I saw it for what it was. A man so obsessed with appearance that reality didn't matter. But you want your kid to be happy, don't you? So you swallow your concerns. You smile at the engagement party. You pay for the wedding dress even though it costs more than your first car. You tell yourself love makes people better. 5 years ago, I did something I thought was generous. I had this lake house up in Chelan, about 3 hours from Seattle. 2 bedrooms, private dock, mountain views. I'd bought it 10 years earlier as a retirement dream. Somewhere quiet to read and watch the seasons change. But at 62, living alone in Seattle, I didn't need 2 properties. So I gave it to Rebecca and Kyle. Well, not exactly gave it. I kept the property in my name for tax reasons and liability protection. 42 years in healthcare teaches you to protect your assets. But I transferred full usage rights to them. Told them to use it whenever they wanted. Their family retreat. Rebecca hugged me when I handed her the keys. Mom, this is incredible. Kyle, and I won't forget this. She smelled like that expensive perfume Kyle bought her. Her hair was styled in that severe way she'd adopted since meeting him. But for a moment, holding her, I saw my little girl again. The one who cared about sick kids smiling. I love you, sweetheart, I told her. I love you too, Mom, she said. I didn't know those would be some of the last genuine words we'd exchange. The distance started slowly. At first, Rebecca called every week, then every other week, then just on holidays and my birthday. The invitations to visit stopped entirely about 3 years ago. Every time I suggested coming to see her and Kyle at their Bellevue penthouse, I got excuses. Not a good time, Mom. We're renovating. Kyle's working crazy hours. Maybe next quarter. Next quarter never came. In 26 months, I saw my daughter exactly 4 times. Every meeting was at a restaurant. Neutral ground. Never at her home. Never anywhere I might see how she actually lived. I told myself she was busy. Successful people are busy. She had a demanding career, a husband, a life. I was just the retired mom who didn't understand the pressure of the corporate world. I made excuses for her the same way I'd watched so many parents make excuses for each other in hospital rooms. He didn't mean to. She was stressed. It was an accident. The lies people tell themselves to avoid seeing the truth. That's why I was surprised when my phone rang on September 12, 2025, at 8:47 in the morning. Rebecca's name on the screen. I answered on the second ring. Hey, Mom. Her voice was clipped. Businesslike. No warmth. Kyle and I are heading to Dubai for 2 weeks. Company retreat. Can you arrange for the lake house to get a deep clean while we're gone? I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, staring at it like it might explain this to me. My daughter, who hadn't visited me in over 2 years, was calling me to arrange her cleaning service. Why can't you hire someone yourselves? I asked. There was a pause. A sigh that said I was being difficult. We're already at the airport, Mom. We're boarding in 20 minutes. You're retired. You have time. Just coordinate with Linda. We need everything cleaned. The whole house. Basement storage, boathouse, everything. Linda Vasquez was the property manager I'd hired 5 years ago when I gave them the lake house. She was 52, a former real estate agent who'd switched to property management after the 2008 crash. Professional. Thorough. She sent me monthly reports with photos showing the property was being maintained. I'd never had any concerns. Fine, I said. I'll take care of it. Great. Text me when it's done. We land back on the 24th. The call ended. No, thank you. No, how are you, Mom? No, I miss you. Just click. Gone. I sat there in my Seattle condo, my coffee getting cold, staring at my phone. My daughter needed something from me, but she couldn't spare 5 minutes for an actual conversation. I called Linda that afternoon. Linda, it's Margaret Chen. Rebecca asked me to arrange a deep clean of the lake house while she and Kyle are traveling. Of course, Mrs. Chen. I can start tomorrow morning. I have the keys. They want everything done. She specifically mentioned the basement storage. There was a pause. A hesitation that I should have paid more attention to. I don't usually go down there. They told me that area was private. Something cold moved through my chest. They're asking for it to be clean now. All right. I'll take care of it. I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why a basement storage room needed to be kept private from the property manager. But I didn't. I trusted my daughter. That was my mistake. September 13th. 11:23 in the morning. I was at a nursing conference in Portland, sitting through a presentation on pediatric pain management. My phone vibrated in my purse. Linda Vasquez. I stepped out into the hallway to answer. Mrs. Chen. Her voice was shaking. Not like someone who'd found a leak or a broken window. Like someone who'd seen something that changed them. You need to come here right now. What's wrong? Her voice broke. Mrs. Chen, there's a little girl locked in the basement storage room. She's crying. She says her name is Emma. She says she's your granddaughter. The conference room behind me. The presentation on pain management. The other nurses taking notes. All of it disappeared. I don't have a granddaughter, I said. But even as I said it, the cold thing in my chest was spreading. Mrs. Chen, this child is real. She's 6 years old. She's been locked down here. There's a padlock on the outside of the door. Linda's voice cracked completely. She's so thin. And scared. And she's asking for help. Call 911, I said. My nurse training kicked in.
Protocol. Procedure.
Save the emotion for later. I'm on my way. Don't let anyone near that room except the police. I'll be there as fast as I can. The drive from Portland to Chelan is normally 3.5 hours. I made it in 2 hours and 47 minutes. I don't remember most of it. Just the white line on the highway, the pressure of the gas pedal, the thoughts spinning in my head like broken glass.
Emma.
Rebecca had a daughter named Emma. 6 years old. 6 years old. Rebecca had been married to Kyle for 6 years. The math was there if I'd been willing to do it. But my mind kept rejecting it. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Not my daughter. Not the little girl who'd wanted to make sick kids smile. But 42 years in pediatric nursing had taught me something else. The worst abuse happens in families. The worst neglect comes from people who are supposed to love you. And the signs are always there if you're willing to look. I'd been trained to look. But when it was my own family, I'd gone blind. Police cars were already at the lakehouse when I pulled up. An ambulance. Linda standing on the porch, her face pale, her hand shaking. A detective I didn't know was taking her statement. I got out of my car on legs that didn't feel steady. I'm Margaret Chen, I told the detective. This is my property. Where's the child? He looked at me with an expression I'd seen before. The look professionals give family members when they have to deliver terrible news. Mrs. Chen, I'm Detective Sarah Williams. We've secured the scene. The child is still in the basement. We waited for you to arrive before removing her.
Why?
Because she's terrified. She doesn't know us. We thought a family member might help her feel safer. A family member. I was a family member. But this child didn't know I existed any more than I'd known she existed. The basement stairs were through the kitchen. Wooden steps leading down into dimness. The property had been built in the 70s, and the basement was that old kind, concrete floors, small windows near the ceiling, the smell of earth and age. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw the storage room door. It was open now, the padlock cut, and lying on the floor. A uniformed officer stood guard. Inside, I could hear crying.
Soft.
Hiccuping. The sound of a child who'd learned that loud crying brought punishment. I stepped into that room, and my 42 years of nursing experience shattered. I'd seen sick children. Dying children. Children with cancer, with genetic disorders, with injuries that made me want to scream at the universe. But this was different. This was deliberate. Someone had done this on purpose. The room was maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. Concrete walls. A thin mattress on the floor. Plastic bowls with dried food stuck to them. A bucket in the corner that smelled of urine. Children's books scattered around, their pages worn like they'd been read 1,000 times because there was nothing else to do. A stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. A overhead light bulb, harsh and yellow. No windows. No warmth. No life. And on the mattress, pressed into the corner, was a little girl. 6 years old. Dark hair tangled and dirty. Skin so pale, it looked translucent. Wearing a pink dress that was stained and too small, like she'd outgrown it months ago, but no one had noticed or cared. Her arms were wrapped around her knees. Her eyes, huge and dark and so frightened, tracked every movement I made. I'd been trained for trauma. Trained to stay calm. To be professional, to separate my emotions from my actions. But when I looked at that child, at my granddaughter, at this little girl my daughter had locked away like garbage, something in my chest cracked open.
Hi, sweetheart, I said.
My voice came out steady somehow. Gentle. The voice I'd used with thousands of scared children over 4 decades. My name is Margaret. I'm here to help you. Can you tell me your name? She stared at me for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Emma. My name is Emma. That's a beautiful name. I crouched down slowly, making myself smaller, less threatening. Emma, are you hurt? Are you in pain anywhere? She shook her head. Are you hungry? Thirsty? A tiny nod. Okay, we're going to get you out of here. We're going to get you food and water, and take care of you. Is that all right? Another nod, smaller. Emma, I'm your grandmother. Do you know what that means? Her eyes went wide. Mommy said I don't have a grandma. She said I wasn't supposed to be here. The words hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't supposed to be here. This child, my granddaughter, had been erased from existence.
Hidden.
Locked away. Made to believe she was wrong for existing. You do have a grandma, I said. My voice was shaking now.
Me.
And you're supposed to be here. In the world. With people who love you. What happened to you is wrong, Emma. Do you understand that? She looked at me with an expression too old for a 6-year-old face. I tried to be quiet. I tried so hard not to make noise. But sometimes I got scared at night, and I cried, and I thought maybe someone would hear me. Did you hear me? I had to swallow hard before I could speak. Someone heard you, sweetheart. And now you're going to be safe. I promise you that. The paramedics came down then. Young, professional, their faces carefully neutral. But I saw the rage in their eyes when they looked at that room. That carefully controlled fury that medical professionals feel when they see child abuse. They examined Emma while I stayed close, holding her hand. She gripped my fingers so tight it hurt. Her hand was tiny, fragile, like she might break if I let go. Severe malnourishment, one paramedic said quietly to his partner. Dehydration. We need to transport. They wrapped Emma in a blanket. She flinched at first, like she wasn't used to kindness, and carried her up the stairs. I followed, my hand still in hers. In the kitchen, Linda was crying, giving her statement to Detective Williams. Other officers were taking photographs of the basement, documenting the crime scene. Because that's what this was. A crime scene. My daughter's lake house was a crime scene. In the ambulance, Emma wouldn't let go of my hand. Are you coming with me? She asked. I'm not leaving you, I told her. Not for a second. At the hospital, Central Washington Hospital in Wenatchee, they ran every test imaginable. Blood work, x-rays, weight and height measurements. Emma weighed 37 pounds. At 6 years old, she should have weighed between 48 and 52 pounds. She was in the 3rd percentile for her age. 3rd percentile. That means 97% of children her age were healthier than she was. The examining physician, Dr. Rachel Foster, was in her 40s with kind eyes that couldn't quite hide her horror. Mrs. Chen, can I speak with you privately? We stepped outside Emma's room. Through the window, I could see a nurse sitting with her, showing her how the bed controls worked. Emma was staring at the buttons like they were magic. Your granddaughter shows signs of severe, prolonged neglect, Dr. Foster said. Her voice was clinical, but there was anger underneath. Malnourishment consistent with inadequate feeding over an extended period. Dehydration. Vitamin D deficiency, so severe it's affecting her bone density. That's from lack of sunlight. Mrs. Chen, how long has this child been kept in that basement? I don't know, I said. The words felt like glass in my throat. I didn't know she existed until 2 hours ago. Dr. Foster's expression shifted. You didn't know? My daughter never told me she had a child. I haven't been allowed in her home for over 2 years. She gave me excuses. I believed them. I'm required to report this to Child Protective Services. I know. I worked pediatric nursing for 42 years. I know the protocols. She studied my face. Then you know what happens next. CPS will investigate. They'll likely remove the child from parental custody. They'll need to place her somewhere safe while they build their case. Place her with me, I said. I'm her grandmother. I'm a retired pediatric nurse. I have the space, the resources, the experience, and I will never, ever let anyone hurt this child again. The social worker arrived 3 hours later. Linda Chen. No relation, but the name similarity felt like some kind of cosmic joke. She was young, maybe 30, with that exhausted look all social workers get after a few years in the system. Mrs. Margaret Chen, she said, checking her tablet. I'm Linda Chen from the Department of Social Services. I understand you're requesting emergency placement of Emma Morrison. I am. You understand this is your daughter's child. You'd be taking custody away from your own daughter. I looked through the window at Emma, who was eating applesauce with a plastic spoon like it was the most precious thing in the world. My daughter locked a 6-year-old child in a basement for months. Maybe years. I'm not taking her away from her mother. I'm protecting her from her abuser. Linda Chen's expression softened. I pulled your records. 42 years at Seattle Children's Hospital. Spotless background check. References from colleagues describing you as... She checked her tablet. One of the most dedicated child advocates they've ever worked with. You testified as an expert witness in the Patterson case 5 years ago. I remember it. Judge Pierce specifically mentioned your testimony as instrumental in removing those children from an abusive home. She looked up at me. Mrs. Chen, I'm going to recommend emergency kinship placement. Emma will be released to your custody tonight, pending a full hearing. You'll need to attend regular check-ins with our office. Emma will need medical and psychological follow-up.
Can you commit to that?
Whatever it takes. Then let's do the paperwork. By 8 o'clock that night, I was driving back to Seattle with Emma in my car. She sat in the back seat. I bought a car seat at the first store we passed, staring out the window at the dark mountains. Have you ever been to Seattle? I asked her.
No.
I've never been anywhere except the basement. 6 years old. Never been anywhere. Never seen the ocean. Never been to a park. Never had a birthday party with other children. Never been to school. My daughter had stolen her childhood and hidden it away like something shameful. My condo in Seattle is on Capitol Hill. 2 bedrooms, nice view of the city. My retirement space. Quiet. Organized.
Clean.
I'd been living there alone for 3 years and it showed. Nothing child-proofed. No toys. No bright colors. Everything beige and tasteful and adult. Emma stood in the doorway, her small plastic bag of hospital-provided clothes in her hand, and looked around like she'd landed on an alien planet. Is this your house? She asked.
Yes.
And for now, it's your house too. Are you hungry? She nodded. I ordered pizza because I couldn't think of anything else.
Pepperoni.
Every kid likes pepperoni, right? When it arrived, Emma stared at it like I'd presented her with gold. Is this all for me? You can have as much as you want, sweetheart. She ate 4 slices. Then she threw up in my bathroom because her stomach couldn't handle that much food after months of inadequate nutrition. I held her hair back and cleaned her face and wanted to scream at the universe for what had been done to this child. That night, I set her up in my bedroom. The bed was too big, but I piled it with every soft thing I owned. Blankets. Pillows. A stuffed bear I'd bought at the hospital gift shop. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, so small in that big space, and looked up at me with those huge dark eyes. Grandma? It was the first time she'd called me that without prompting. Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for getting me out of the basement. I knelt beside the bed, so I was at her eye level. Emma, you should never have been there in the first place. What your mother and Cal did was wrong. It was cruel. And it will never happen to you again. Do you understand me? Never. Are they going to be mad at me? The question broke my heart. If they are, that's their problem. You didn't do anything wrong. You were a child who needed to be loved and protected. That's what parents are supposed to do. Love and protect. They failed. You didn't. She was asleep within minutes, exhausted from a day that had changed her entire world. I sat in my living room with a glass of wine I didn't drink and stared at nothing. My daughter had done this. Rebecca. My Rebecca. The little girl I'd raised. The child I'd loved and nurtured and sacrificed for. She'd locked her own daughter in a basement like an animal. I didn't realize it then, but sitting there in my dark living room, I was making a decision. I wasn't just taking in Emma temporarily. I wasn't just protecting her until the system figured out what to do. I was going to war. Against my own daughter. Against the son-in-law I'd never liked. Against everyone who'd helped them keep the secret. I was going to destroy them the way they'd tried to destroy this child. And I was going to use every skill, every connection, every piece of knowledge from 42 years in the medical system to do it. Because I knew how the system worked. I knew how to document abuse. I knew what evidence would hold up in court. I knew which doctors to call for evaluations. Which lawyers specialized in parental rights termination. Which judges had zero tolerance for child abuse. I knew all of it. And I was going to weaponize that knowledge against my own daughter. The next morning, I called Susan Park. She was a family law attorney I'd met 5 years ago when I testified in that Patterson case.
Tough.
Smart. Ruthless when she needed to be. Her office was downtown in one of those glass towers near Pike Place Market. Margaret Chen, she said when her secretary put me through. I heard you retired. How's the quiet life? Not so quiet anymore, Susan. I need your help. It's about my granddaughter. I told her everything. The basement, the malnutrition, the 3 years of isolation. Susan listened without interrupting, which is a skill good lawyers have. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, your daughter is going to prison, Margaret. You understand that. I'm counting on it. We met that afternoon. Susan's office overlooked Elliott Bay, and from the 42nd floor, you could see the ferries crossing the water like slow white birds. She had files spread across her mahogany desk. Emergency custody has been granted. That's good. Now we need to move to permanent guardianship and, ideally, termination of parental rights. To do that, we need to build an airtight case. Tell me what you need. Everything. Medical records from the hospital, photographs of the basement, police reports, and we need to document the financial exploitation. I looked at her sharply. What financial exploitation? Your granddaughter is 6 years old. Her parents are legally required to support her. I'm willing to bet they've been claiming her as a dependent on their taxes, collecting tax benefits, possibly setting up accounts in her name. We need to see where that money went. She was right. Over the next week, as I settled into a routine with Emma, school enrollment, doctor's appointments, therapy sessions, Susan's team dug into Rebecca and Kyle's finances. What they found was damning. Rebecca and Kyle had opened a trust account in Emma's name when she was born. They deposited $1,500 into it every month. On paper, they were model parents, setting aside money for their daughter's future. In reality, they were withdrawing that money just as fast as they put it in. The trust account was empty. Every penny had been funneled back into their lifestyle. Susan laid out the bank statements on her desk like she was presenting evidence in court. Over 6 years, they deposited $108,000 into Emma's trust. They withdrew $108,000. Look at the dates of the withdrawals. They match exactly with luxury purchases. This withdrawal for $10,000. She pointed at a highlighted line. That's the same day Kyle bought his Tesla Model S. This one for $18,000? Same week they went to Dubai. They were using their daughter's money to fund vacations while she lived in a basement. I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was rage. Pure, focused rage. How do we use this? Washington State has strict laws about financial exploitation of minors. This isn't just civil fraud. This is criminal. Class C felony. We document everything. We bring it to the prosecutor's office, and we make sure your daughter and her husband face criminal charges. And Margaret? She looked at me over her glasses. This is going to get ugly. When Rebecca finds out what's happening, she's going to fight back. She's going to try to paint you as the villain. Are you prepared for that? Susan, I spent 4 decades watching parents abuse their children and then play victim when they got caught. I know every manipulation tactic in the book. Let her try. September 24th. Rebecca and Kyle's flight from Dubai landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport at 6:37 p.m. I know because I was tracking it. They had no idea what was waiting for them. No idea that while they were sipping cocktails on a beach, their daughter had been found. Their secret had been exposed. Their perfect life was about to implode. I let them get home first. Let them settle in. Unpack their expensive luggage. Post their vacation photos to Instagram. Rebecca's account showed up in my feed the way it always did. Photos of her and Kyle on a yacht, at a 5-star restaurant, drinking champagne at sunset. Her captions were about gratitude and blessed life and living authentically. 22,000 followers double-tapped and left heart emojis. None of them knew about Emma. None of them knew about the basement. At 9:47 p.m., I called her. She answered on the 4th ring.
Mom.
We just got back. Can this wait?
No.
It can't. Come to my apartment tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Both of you. We need to talk about the lakehouse. I heard her sigh. That irritated sigh that said I was being inconvenient. What about it? Did the cleaning get done? We'll discuss it tomorrow. 10 a.m. Don't be late. I hung up before she could argue. September 25th. 10:03 a.m. Rebecca and Kyle arrived at my door. They looked tanned, refreshed,
Happy.
Kyle was carrying shopping bags from Dubai's designer stores. Rebecca was wearing a dress that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. They had no idea their world was about to end. Mom, what's this about? Rebecca said as I let them in. You sounded so serious on the phone. She looked around my living room. Are you redecorating? It looks different. That's when Emma walked out of the bedroom. She was wearing new clothes I'd bought her. Her hair was washed and brushed. She was still too thin, still too pale, but she looked like a child instead of a prisoner. She stopped when she saw Rebecca and Kyle. Her whole body went rigid. Mommy, she said in a small voice. The shopping bags hit the floor. Kyle's face went white. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. For maybe 10 seconds, nobody moved. Then Kyle found his voice. What the hell is she doing here? Not Emma. Not our daughter.
She.
Like she was a thing. An object. A problem. Her name is Emma, I said. My voice was cold. Controlled. Your daughter. My granddaughter. The child you locked in a basement for 3 years. Rebecca started shaking her head, backing toward the door. Mom, this isn't, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I understand that you had a daughter and pretended she didn't exist. I understand that you kept her in a basement with a bucket for a toilet and barely enough food to survive. I understand that you stole her money to buy cars and take vacations. I understand all of it, Rebecca. What I don't understand is how my daughter turned into a monster. We were going to move her, Kyle said. His lawyer voice was kicking in.
Smooth.
Practiced. It was temporary. We were planning to set up a proper room. Shut up, I said. I've heard every excuse abusive parents make. I've listened to 42 years of people like you explaining why the bruises were accidents, why the broken bones were falls, why the neglect was just stress. You locked a child in a basement. There's no explanation that makes that acceptable. Rebecca was crying now. Mom, please.
You don't know what it's like.
I didn't plan for a child.
Kyle didn't want one.
It just happened and I didn't know what to do and instead of getting help, instead of putting her up for adoption, instead of literally any other option, you locked her away like garbage. My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Did you know she's severely malnourished? Did you know her bone density is compromised from lack of sunlight? Did you know she has PTSD from being isolated in the dark? Did you know any of that, Rebecca? Or did you just not care? Of course I cared. Rebecca was shouting now. She's my daughter. I love her. You don't lock people you love in basements. The words came out like a scream. Emma was crying now, hiding behind my leg. I forced myself to lower my voice. Get out of my apartment. Emma is our daughter, Kyle said. You can't keep her from us. Watch me. I have emergency custody granted by the state. You're prohibited from contact pending a full hearing. And Kyle? Susan Park says hello. She's looking forward to seeing you in court. I saw the recognition in his eyes. Susan was known in Seattle legal circles. She destroyed people for a living. You hired Susan Park? Rebecca's voice was small now. You're really going to fight us for custody? I'm not fighting you for custody. I already have it. I'm fighting to make sure you never get it back. And I'm going to make sure you both go to prison for what you did. They left. Kyle practically dragged Rebecca out the door. I could hear her crying in the hallway. I should have felt something. Guilt. Sadness. Some shred of maternal instinct that made me want to comfort my daughter. But all I felt was cold satisfaction. The first blow had been struck. They knew now. They knew their secret was out. They knew they were in trouble. And they had no idea how much worse it was going to get. Over the next 2 weeks, I built the case with Susan's help. We compiled everything. Medical records showing Emma's malnutrition, vitamin deficiencies, psychological trauma. Photographs of the basement room that made even hardened police officers look away. Detective Williams' report documenting the padlock, the conditions, Linda Vasquez's statement about being forbidden from entering that room. The financial records showing systematic theft from Emma's trust account. Search histories from Rebecca's laptop that Linda had found at the lakehouse. Searches for how to hide child from family. Legal consequences, child neglect. Can CPS take your child if you homeschool? Rebecca had researched this, planned it, known it was wrong, and done it anyway. But the most damning evidence came from Rebecca's own computer. Susan's forensic investigator found an email Rebecca had sent Kyle 3 years ago. Subject line: solution. I read it once and felt something break inside me that would never heal. Kyle, I know you're stressed about Emma. I am too. But I think I have an answer. Mom's lakehouse. It's isolated, she never uses it, and the basement storage room is soundproof. We could set it up with a mattress, some food, books. She'd be safe, and we'd be free. No more hiding her in closets when people come over. No more worrying about neighbors hearing her. Just until she's old enough to understand, she can't tell anyone. What do you think? Kyle's response was 2 words. How soon? They'd planned it.
Calculated it.
Turned the gift I'd given them, my lakehouse, my gesture of love, into a prison for their child. And I hadn't known. I'd been traveling for nursing conferences, enjoying my retirement, thinking my daughter was living her best life. All while Emma sat in the dark, alone, wondering why nobody loved her enough to save her. The custody hearing was set for October 2nd. Susan prepared me for what would happen. Rebecca and Kyle will have a lawyer. Probably someone expensive. They'll try to paint this as a misunderstanding. They'll claim you're exaggerating. They'll say Emma had behavioral problems that required special handling. They'll probably try to make you look like a controlling mother who's using this situation to punish Rebecca for growing distant.
You need to be ready for that.
I am ready. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in my most professional clothes. Navy suit. Minimal makeup. Hair pulled back. I looked like what I was, a retired medical professional. Credible. Serious. Someone a judge would trust. Emma stayed with a neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher who'd become something like a grandmother figure herself over the past weeks. Emma still struggled with separation anxiety, but she was learning.
Slowly.
King County Family Court was downtown in a building that tried to look friendly with plants and soft lighting but couldn't quite hide what it was, a place where families came apart. Rebecca and Kyle were already there with their lawyer, David Chen. No relation to me, but the name made me irrationally angry anyway. He was expensive. I could tell by the suit, by the watch, by the way he carried his briefcase like it was a weapon. Judge Patricia Wong presided. I'd testified in her courtroom before, years ago in that Patterson case.
She remembered me.
I could see it in the slight nod she gave when I walked in. That was good. She knew I wasn't the type to exaggerate. Knew I took child welfare seriously. Susan presented our case methodically. First, the medical evidence. Dr. Foster testified about Emma's condition when she was brought in. The malnutrition, the vitamin deficiencies, the bone density issues from lack of sunlight. This child had not seen adequate daylight in months, possibly years, Dr. Foster said. Her physical condition is consistent with prolonged neglect and confinement. David Chen tried to object. Your Honor, there's no proof my clients intended to harm the child. Judge Wong cut him off. Counsel, I've read the medical reports. Let's move on. Next came the photographs. Susan had them displayed on a screen in the courtroom. That basement room in all its horror. The thin mattress. The bucket. The overhead bulb. The padlock on the outside of the door. I watched Rebecca's face as the photos appeared. She was crying. But I couldn't tell if it was genuine remorse or performance. After 42 years watching parents cry in hospital rooms while their children suffered, I'd learned that tears don't mean anything. Actions mean everything. Then Linda Vasquez testified. She was nervous, twisting her hands together, but her voice was steady. I managed the property for 5 years. I never saw a child there. Mrs. Morrison specifically told me the basement was off limits. Said it was private storage. When I heard crying that day, I thought it was an animal at first. Then I heard help me and I knew
there was a child down there.
when I opened that door and saw her. Linda's voice broke. I've never seen anything like it. She was so small, so scared. She asked me if I was the cleaning lady. Like that was normal. Like she was used to being found by strangers because her parents had abandoned her. David Chen cross-examined. Ms. Vasquez, did you ever actually witness my clients harming Emma? I witnessed a child locked in a basement. Did you see them hit her? Yell at her? Physically abuse her? I saw the results of their abuse. That was enough. Susan presented the financial evidence next. The trust account, the deposits and withdrawals, the timeline showing how Emma's money funded luxury purchases. $108,000 stolen from a child who was eating maybe $200 worth of food per month in a basement. Your Honor, Susan said, this wasn't neglect born of ignorance or poverty. These are educated, wealthy individuals who chose to imprison their daughter so they could maintain a lifestyle. They stole from her to buy cars and take vacations while she lived in conditions that violate every standard of human decency. Then it was time for the psychological evaluation. Dr. Helen Cho had been seeing Emma twice a week. Her report was 37 pages of clinical language that described unimaginable trauma. Susan read excerpts aloud. Emma Morrison presents with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Symptoms include nightmares, hypervigilance, fear of enclosed spaces, and extreme anxiety when separated from her current guardian. She demonstrates developmental delays in speech, approximately 2 years behind her age level. She exhibits social anxiety disorder and shows significant delays in age-appropriate play skills. When asked to draw her family, she drew only herself, alone in a dark room. When asked about her parents, she said, "Mommy said I had to be quiet because I'm not supposed to be here." Judge Wong was reading along in her copy. Her face was granite. This child, Dr. Cho's report continued, has been subjected to systematic isolation and deprivation. Her conditions of confinement, living in a basement room with minimal human contact, inadequate nutrition, no educational stimulation, no social interaction, constitute severe psychological abuse. The trauma she has experienced will require years of intensive therapeutic intervention. In my professional opinion, returning this child to her parents' custody would constitute continued abuse. David Chen stood to present Rebecca and Kyle's defense. It was pathetic. Your Honor, my clients love their daughter. The basement arrangement was intended as temporary during a difficult period. They were planning to create a proper living space for Emma but were overwhelmed by work obligations and… Counselor, Judge Wong interrupted. Are you seriously arguing that being too busy with work is an excuse for locking a child in a basement? I'm saying the situation has been mischaracterized. My clients never intended harm. Intent is irrelevant when a 6-year-old child is found malnourished and traumatized in a locked room. David Chen tried a different approach. Mrs. Chen has her own motivations here. She's been estranged from her daughter for years. There's a history of family conflict. She may be using this situation to punish Rebecca for growing distant. Susan was on her feet immediately. Your Honor, may I? Judge Wong nodded. Susan approached the bench. Mrs. Margaret Chen was a pediatric nurse for 42 years. She has testified as an expert witness in child abuse cases in this very courtroom. She has no history of making false accusations. She found her granddaughter in conditions that would horrify anyone with basic human decency. The suggestion that she fabricated or exaggerated this situation is offensive and unsupported by any evidence. Judge Wong looked at David Chen. Do you have any evidence that Mrs. Chen fabricated anything? Any proof that the photographs are staged? That the medical records are false? That Dr. Cho's evaluation is inaccurate? No, Your Honor, but then I suggest you move on to something substantive.
Susan called me to testify.
I swore the oath and sat in the witness box feeling strangely calm. Susan asked me about finding Emma, about my medical background, about my plans for her care. I answered honestly, directly. When David Chen cross-examined me, he tried to rattle me. Mrs. Chen, you testified in another abuse case 5 years ago, correct? Yes. Against parents who claimed they were innocent. Parents who were proven guilty and had their children removed, yes. You seem to have a pattern of involving yourself in family situations. I have a pattern of protecting children from abuse. It's what I did professionally for 42 years. It's what I'm doing now. You're close to your granddaughter, aren't you? You've bonded with her over these past weeks.
Yes.
She's my family. Isn't it possible you're too emotionally involved to be objective about this situation? I looked directly at him. Mr. Chen, objectivity is not required when a child is found locked in a basement.
Humanity is. Decency is.
The willingness to protect an innocent child from the people who hurt her. I have all of those things. What I don't have is any tolerance for lawyers who defend child abusers. Judge Wong didn't even try to hide her slight smile. Mrs. Chen, please limit your responses to the questions asked. Yes, Your Honor. The hearing lasted 6 hours. At 4:37 p.m., Judge Wong delivered her ruling. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. The medical reports, the photographs, the financial records, the psychological evaluation, the testimony from witnesses, and the parties involved. I find the evidence overwhelming and disturbing. Emma Morrison was subjected to severe neglect and abuse. She was confined to a basement room for an extended period, deprived of adequate nutrition, sunlight, education, and human contact. Her parents, Rebecca Morrison and Kyle Morrison, systematically isolated and neglected their daughter while using funds intended for her care to finance personal luxuries. This is not a case of struggling parents making mistakes. This is calculated, deliberate abuse. Rebecca was sobbing. Kyle was stone-faced. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Judge Wong continued. Emergency custody will remain with Margaret Chen. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the King County Prosecutor's Office for review of criminal charges. The evidence suggests multiple potential charges including child endangerment, criminal mistreatment, and financial exploitation of a minor. Rebecca Morrison and Kyle Morrison are prohibited from any contact with Emma pending resolution of criminal proceedings. This court will reconvene after criminal charges are resolved to make a final determination on permanent custody and parental rights. Court adjourned. The gavel came down like a gunshot. In the hallway, Rebecca tried to approach me. David Chen grabbed her arm, stopping her, but she pulled free. Mom, please. You have to understand. I never meant to hurt her. I was overwhelmed and scared, and you locked her in a basement for 3 years, I said. My voice was quiet, but every word was a blade. You stole her money. You starved her. You isolated her. You tried to erase her existence. There's no explanation that makes that forgivable. She's my daughter. Rebecca screamed. People in the hallway were staring now. I have a right to her. You had rights. You forfeited them when you put a padlock on her door. Now get away from me before I call security. Kyle appeared, trying to pull Rebecca away. He looked at me with pure hatred. You're destroying our lives, you bitter old woman. No, I said. You destroyed your lives when you decided a child was disposable. I'm just making sure everyone knows what you are. They left. Rebecca was still crying. Kyle was on his phone, probably calling lawyers or family members or anyone who might help them. I stood in that courthouse hallway feeling the weight of what I'd done. I'd testified against my own daughter. Watched her be led away in tears. Used my professional knowledge to destroy her in court. And I didn't regret a single second of it. The prosecutor moved fast. 2 weeks after the custody hearing, criminal charges were filed. Child endangerment in the first degree. Criminal mistreatment in the first degree. Financial exploitation of a minor. Each charge was a felony. Each carried serious prison time. Rebecca and Kyle were arrested on a Tuesday morning. I heard about it from Susan, who'd been monitoring the case. They posted bail within hours, $75,000 each, but the damage was done. The news coverage started that evening. Local marketing executive and attorney charged in child abuse case. They showed Rebecca's professional photo next to her mugshot. The contrast was stark. In her LinkedIn photo, she was smiling, confident, successful. In her mugshot, she looked destroyed. The story went viral. Seattle has an active online community, and when people heard about a child found in a basement, they were horrified. Rebecca's Instagram, which she'd carefully curated for years, became a graveyard. Thousands of people unfollowed. The comments on her old posts were vicious. You posted vacation photos while your daughter was locked in a basement? How do you sleep at night, monster? Rebecca tried to fight back. Posted a long, tearful statement claiming this was all a misunderstanding. That I was manipulating the situation. That she loved Emma and had been planning to give her a proper room. The internet destroyed her. People found the court documents. Found the photos of the basement. Found Dr. Cho's psychological evaluation, which had been entered into public record. They posted screenshots everywhere. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is evil. Rebecca deleted the post within 2 hours. Deactivated her Instagram account. But the internet doesn't forget. Screenshots lived forever. Kyle's law firm fired him 3 days after his arrest. Rebecca's pharmaceutical company put her on administrative leave, then quietly let her go a week later. Their Bellevue penthouse had a mortgage they couldn't pay without their 6-figure salaries. They had to sell it at a loss. Their friends stopped calling. Kyle's parents, who'd initially tried to defend him, saw the evidence and released a public statement. We had no knowledge of what our son and daughter-in-law were doing. We are horrified. We support Margaret Chen and Emma fully. They even paid for Susan's legal fees. $47,000. We raised him better than this, Kyle's father told me when he called. We failed. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, Emma was healing. Slowly. She'd started first grade, should have been in kindergarten, but she tested ahead academically even with her social delays. Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, called me after the first week. Mrs. Chen, Emma is a remarkable child. She's clearly behind socially, but she's so eager to learn. So kind to the other children. Today, one of her classmates fell, and Emma ran over to help her up and said, "It's okay. You're going to be fine." Where did she learn that kind of empathy after what she's been through? From somewhere her mother couldn't reach, I said. Emma made friends. Marcus with a dinosaur backpack, who shared his crayons. Sophia Park, who invited Emma to her house for a playdate. Emma was terrified at first, convinced something bad would happen if she left my sight. But Sophia's mother was patient and kind, and after an hour, Emma was laughing and playing like any normal 6-year-old. When I picked her up, she was glowing. "Grandma, I have friends now." The nightmares were getting better. She still woke up screaming sometimes, convinced she was back in the basement. But instead of every night, it was down to 2 or 3 times a week. She was eating more, gaining weight. Her skin wasn't so pale anymore. She'd started asking questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do clouds come from? Can we plant a garden? The curiosity that had been beaten down by isolation was coming back. But the psychological scars were deep. She hoarded food in her room, hiding crackers and fruit snacks in her dresser drawer. Dr. Cho said it was normal for children who'd been starved. She was terrified of locked doors. I had to remove the locks from all the interior doors in my condo because the sound of them clicking shut sent her into panic attacks. She needed constant reassurance that I wasn't going to leave her. "You promise you're not going away?" she'd ask multiple times a day. "I promise, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." In November, the plea negotiation started. David Chen approached the prosecutor with a deal. Rebecca and Kyle would plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for lighter sentences. The prosecutor called Susan.
Susan called me.
They want to avoid trial. Plead guilty to child endangerment and financial exploitation. Drop the criminal mistreatment charge. The prosecutor is willing to consider it, but she wants your input. Emma is the victim here. You're her guardian. What do you want? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. I want them to admit what they did. In court. Under oath. I want them to stand in front of a judge and say the words, "I locked my daughter in a basement and stole her money." I want it on the record. Forever. And then I want them to go to prison. The plea deal was finalized in early December. Rebecca and Kyle would plead guilty to child endangerment in the first degree and financial exploitation of a minor. The criminal mistreatment charge would be dropped. In exchange, they'd voluntarily terminate their parental rights to Emma. No trial. No fighting. Just a clean break. They don't want to risk a trial, Susan explained. The evidence is overwhelming. They'd lose custody anyway and face maximum sentences. This way, they get some control over the outcome. And we get Emma. Permanently. Forever. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for January 14th. 26 degrees outside. Snow threatening. I wore the same navy suit I'd worn to the custody hearing. Emma stayed home with Mrs. Patterson again.
She didn't need to see this.
Didn't need to watch her parents being sentenced to prison. That was my job. I would watch. I would remember. And I would make sure she never had to think about them again, if she didn't want to. The courtroom was packed. More reporters than before. News vans outside. This case had captured Seattle's attention in a way few did. Maybe because Rebecca and Kyle looked like people you'd meet at a dinner party. Educated. Successful. Normal. And that's what scared everyone. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Judge Wong called the court to order. Rebecca and Kyle stood before her. Rebecca was wearing a conservative dress, minimal makeup, trying to look remorseful. Kyle wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Even now, even facing prison, he cared about appearance. Judge Wong looked at them with an expression I'd seen before. A judge who'd seen too much human cruelty and had run out of patience for it. The prosecutor went first. Outlined the charges. The evidence. The recommended sentences. Then Susan stood. Your Honor, the guardian of the victim would like to make a statement. Judge Wong nodded. Mrs. Chen, please approach. I walked to the witness stand. Swore the oath again. Looked at my daughter and son-in-law and felt nothing but cold certainty about what I was about to do. Your Honor, I spent 42 years as a pediatric nurse. I've seen terrible things. Children beaten. Burned.
Starved.
Neglected. I thought I'd seen every form abuse could take. But I never imagined finding my own granddaughter locked in a basement in my own property that I'd given to my daughter as a gift of love. That betrayal, using my generosity as a weapon against a child, that's something I'll carry for the rest of my life. I looked at Rebecca. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Emma is 6 years old. When I found her, she weighed 37 pounds. She was terrified of sunlight. She didn't know what grass felt like. She'd never been to school. Never had a birthday party with friends. Never been to a park. She'd been erased from existence so that her parents could maintain their perfect Instagram lives. They stole her childhood. Stole her money. Stole everything she should have had and spent it on cars and vacations and jewelry. My voice was getting louder despite my efforts to stay calm. The psychological damage may never fully heal. Emma wakes up screaming from nightmares. She hoards food in her room because she's afraid I won't feed her. She asks me 20 times a day if I'm going to leave her because her own mother abandoned her in the dark. She's 6 years old, and she's learned that the people who are supposed to love you can hurt you worse than anyone else. I took a breath, steadied myself. But here's what Your Honor needs to know. Despite everything they did to her, Emma is surviving. She's in school. She has friends. She's laughing again. She's learning what it means to be loved unconditionally. And she's doing that because she's away from the people who hurt her. The best thing that ever happened to Emma was being found. And the best thing for her future is ensuring the people who abused her face real consequences and never have access to her again. I looked at Rebecca one more time. She was crying. My daughter made her choices. She chose her lifestyle over her child's welfare. She chose luxury over love. She chose to lock a 6-year-old in a basement rather than sacrifice anything. Those choices have consequences. And I'm asking this court to ensure those consequences are severe enough that Emma never has to fear them again. I sat down. The courtroom was silent except for Rebecca sobbing. Judge Wong reviewed her notes. Then she looked up. Rebecca Morrison. Kyle Morrison. Please stand. They stood. Rebecca was shaking. Kyle's jaw was clenched so tight, I could see the muscles jumping. "I've been on this bench for 30 years, Judge Wong said. "I have presided over hundreds of cases involving child abuse and neglect. This case is among the most disturbing I have encountered. Not because of physical violence, but because of the calculated, systematic nature of the abuse. You didn't hurt your daughter in a moment of anger. You didn't neglect her out of ignorance. You deliberately, consciously decided to imprison a child for years. You stole from her. You erased her existence. You treated her as an inconvenience to be hidden away." Rebecca was openly sobbing now. Kyle was stone-faced. Judge Wong continued. "Rebecca Morrison, for the crime of child endangerment in the first degree, I sentence you to 36 months in the Washington Correction Center for Women, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. For financial exploitation of a minor, I add an additional 12 months to run consecutively. Total sentence, 48 months incarceration with possibility of early release after serving 24 months. For years, Rebecca would serve 4 years in prison." Judge Wong turned to Kyle. "Kyle Morrison, for the crime of child endangerment in the first degree, I sentence you to 42 months in Washington State Penitentiary, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. For financial exploitation of a minor, an additional 12 months to run consecutively. Total sentence, 54 months with possibility of early release after serving 27 months. 4.5 years for Kyle. Longer because he'd managed the trust account. The theft had been primarily his doing." Judge Wong wasn't finished. "Both of you will repay $54,000 to Emma's trust fund, plus $47,000 in legal fees to Margaret Chen. You are both prohibited from working with children in any capacity for the rest of your lives. Your parental rights to Emma Morrison have been voluntarily terminated. You will have no custody, no visitation, no contact whatsoever. When Emma turns 18, if she wishes to contact you, that will be her choice and hers alone. Until then, you are legally strangers to her." The gavel came down. Final. Irrevocable. Bailiffs moved forward to take them into custody. Rebecca turned to me, her face a mess of tears and mascara. "Emma," she screamed. "Tell Emma I'm sorry. Tell her I love her." I said nothing, just watched as they led her away. Kyle went quietly, his face blank, the perfect mask finally cracking. In the hallway afterward, reporters swarmed. Questions shouted from every direction. "Mrs. Chen, how do you feel? Did you forgive your daughter? Will Emma ever see her parents again?" I stopped, looked directly at the cameras. My daughter made choices that harmed an innocent child. She's facing the consequences of those choices. That's justice. Emma is safe now. She's thriving. She's learning what it means to be loved. That's all that matters. 3 weeks later, the final custody hearing. Judge Wong made it official. Permanent guardianship granted to Margaret Chen.
Emma was legally mine.
Forever. No one could challenge it. No one could take her away. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood. "Your Honor, I'm 67 years old. I thought retirement would be quiet, peaceful. But raising Emma is the most important work I've ever done. She's safe. She's loved. She's becoming the child she was always meant to be. Thank you for making that permanent." That afternoon, I did something I'd been planning since the sentencing. I put the Chelan lakehouse on the market. Sold it within 4 days for $615,000. Every single penny went into a trust fund for Emma.
Protected by law.
Managed by a financial advisor I trusted. Emma would have everything she needed for college, for her future, for whatever life she wanted to build. Rebecca had stolen $54,000 from her daughter. I was giving her $615,000. That was the difference between us. Now, 9 months after I found Emma in that basement, we have a routine. She wakes up at 6:30 without screaming anymore. We have breakfast together. She eats full meals now, no more hoarding food. She takes the bus to school. Comes home at 3:30 and tells me everything about her day. We do homework at the kitchen table. She's reading at a 2nd grade level now, advanced for her age. She's making up for lost time. Twice a week, Dr. Cho continues therapy. The nightmares are down to once or twice a week. Emma is learning to trust that good things can stay good. That people who say they love you can actually mean it. She still asks me if I'm going to leave, but not 20 times a day anymore. Maybe 3 or 4. Progress. She has 3 close friends now. Marcus, Sophia, and a girl named Zoe who's teaching her to jump rope. Normal kid things. The childhood Rebecca tried to steal from her. Last week, Emma came home from school excited. "Grandma, guess what? Sophia invited me to her birthday party. At the park. With a cake and games and everything. Can I go? Please?" I knelt down so I was at her eye level. "Of course you can go, sweetheart. We'll get Sophia a present and you'll have so much fun." Emma threw her arms around me. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, Emma. So much." People ask me if I regret what I did. If I feel guilty for sending my own daughter to prison. For destroying her life. For making it impossible for her to ever see Emma again. I don't. Not even a little bit. Rebecca made her choices. She chose to lock a child in a basement. She chose luxury over love. She chose to steal from her daughter to fund vacations and cars. Those choices had consequences. I didn't send her to prison. Her actions did. I just made sure the truth came out. Do I mourn the daughter I thought I had? Yes. The little girl who baked cookies for sick children is gone. Maybe she never really existed. Maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. But I don't mourn the woman she became. That woman earned every day of her sentence. What I do mourn is the time Emma lost. 3 years of childhood stolen. Birthdays alone in the dark. No friends. No school. No sunshine. That's gone forever. I can't give it back to her. But I can give her the future. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm 67 years old. I thought retirement would be about quiet hobbies and travel. Instead, I'm raising a 6-year-old. Homework. Parent-teacher conferences. Playdates. Bedtime stories. Birthday parties at parks. And you know what? It's the best thing I've ever done. Emma is safe. Emma is loved. Emma is becoming who she was always meant to be. That's worth more than any quiet retirement. That's worth everything. Last night, after her bath and bedtime story, Emma looked up at me from her bed. The bed that's in a real room with windows and light and stuffed animals.
So different from that basement.
"Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you found me." I had to swallow hard before I could answer. "I'm glad I found you too, Emma. So glad." Do you think Mommy misses me?" It's a question she asks sometimes. I'm careful with my answer. I think she probably does. But Emma, your job isn't to worry about her. Your job is to be a kid. To go to school and play with your friends and be happy. My job is to keep you safe. Can you let me do my job?" She smiled. "Okay, Grandma."
Good.
"Now, get some sleep. We're going to the zoo tomorrow, remember?" I remember. I can't wait. She was asleep within minutes. I turned off the light, not all the way. She still needs her night light, and stood in the doorway watching her breathe. This child who'd been locked away like garbage. Who'd been starved and isolated and treated as worthless. She was sleeping peacefully now.
Safe. Loved. Free.
Somewhere in Washington Correction Center for Women, Rebecca is in a cell, serving her sentence, learning what it means to face consequences. I don't think about her much anymore. She's become someone I used to know. A cautionary tale about what happens when you choose wrong. And here, in my small condo in Capitol Hill, a little girl sleeps safely. Dreams whatever 6-year-olds dream. Protected by a grandmother who will never let anyone hurt her again. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. A grandmother and granddaughter building a life together from the ruins of betrayal. Sometimes it's a 6-year-old who finally feels safe enough to sleep through the night. Sometimes it's enough to know you did the right thing even when it was the hardest thing. I chose Emma. I chose her over my daughter. Over family loyalty. Over the comfort of pretending everything was fine. And I'd make that choice again. Every single time. Because at the end of every horrible thing that happened, there was this Emma laughing, Emma learning, Emma healing, Emma safe. That's not revenge. That's justice. And sometimes justice is enough. Rebecca sent me a letter 3 months ago from prison, begging me to bring Emma to visit, begging for forgiveness, begging for another chance. I read it once. Then I shredded it and threw it away. Some things are unforgivable. Some betrayals are too deep. Some people show you exactly who they are, and you need to believe them. Rebecca showed me she was capable of locking a child in a basement, of stealing from her, of erasing her existence for years. When someone shows you that, you don't give them another chance. You protect the victim and you walk away. Emma doesn't ask about her mother much anymore. She's building a new life where Rebecca doesn't exist, where her world is safe and bright and full of people who actually love her. That's how it should be. Children shouldn't have to forgive their abusers just because they share DNA. Last week, Emma drew a picture in art class. Ms. Rodriguez sent it home with a note. Emma drew her family today. I thought you'd want to see it. In the picture, there were 2 figures. A small one labeled me and a taller one labeled Grandma. Both were smiling. Both were holding hands. There was a house with windows and a door. A sun in the corner. Flowers in the yard. Everything a child's drawing should be. No basement. No darkness. No fear. Just a child and her grandmother. Safe.
Happy.
Together. I put that drawing on my refrigerator next to all her others. A gallery of her healing. Every picture a little brighter than the last. People tell me I'm a hero, that I saved Emma's life. But I don't feel like a hero. I feel like someone who did the bare minimum required of a decent human being. I found a child in danger, and I protected her. That's not heroic. That's just not being a monster. The real hero is Emma. 6 years old, and she survived what would break most adults. 3 years in isolation, and she came out still capable of love. Still capable of trust. Still capable of hope. She's the one rebuilding herself piece by piece. Learning to be a child. Learning that the world can be good. That people can be trusted. That love doesn't come with locks and darkness. I'm just the one who gave her the space to heal. The one who promised to keep her safe, and meant it. The one who chose her over everything else. And I'll keep choosing her. Every single day. For the rest of my life. Emma is safe now. Emma is loved. Emma is free. My daughter is in prison. My son-in-law is in prison. Their perfect life is destroyed. Their reputations are ruined. They lost everything. And I don't feel bad about it for a single second. Because when you lock a child in a basement, you don't deserve sympathy. You deserve consequences. You deserve justice. You deserve to lose everything you valued more than that child. Family doesn't excuse betrayal. Blood doesn't excuse abuse. Love doesn't excuse cruelty. Those are pretty words people use to protect abusers and silence victims. But I know the truth. I spent 42 years learning it. The truth is simple. Children deserve protection. Even from their parents. Especially from their parents. Rebecca made her choices. I made mine. She chose a basement and a padlock. I chose Emma and freedom. History will judge which of us chose right. But I already know the answer. It's in Emma's laughter. In her drawings. In the way she runs to me after school. In the way she sleeps peacefully, without nightmares. In the way she's learning that she matters. That she's valuable. That she deserves love and safety and all the things that were stolen from her. That's my answer. That's my justice. That's enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have turned in your own daughter to protect your granddaughter? Let me know below. Click the video on your left for the next story. Thank you for watching.